The Milford School Committee meeting on Thursday, May 1st, 2014. Tonight's meeting is being broadcast through local media and other outlets, with other media outlets are present. If anyone would like a rebroadcast, please contact any member of the school committee or the administration. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for our hour later meeting this evening. We're going to start off with the approval of minutes, as we always do. So let's go ahead and start off with the approval of minutes. I trust all members have had an opportunity to review the minutes. Okay, so we'll start off with, take a motion to accept the minutes from Dawn, second from Mike. All in favor? Motion passes. The next thing we'll move on to is announcements and correspondence and distribution.
Mr. Chairman,
Mike.
if I may, I had the opportunity last night to attend Cultures of the World at the Stacy School with some of my fellow members. I think you would agree that it was just an outstanding job done by Kurt Shady, Nancy Angelini, and her team. Just a great event every year to go to. One of the things that intrigued me was there was a gentleman from Cameroon, and I don't know if you saw, he had a laptop playing, and I thought it was a festival. It was actually the funeral of his father-in-law, and he was saying that they celebrate the life.
Oh, wow.
You know, and it was very interesting. He says, you're sad, but they take 2 or 3 days, I forget what he said, but they actually celebrate the life, and they have all these different colors on, and they're actually out in the street performing this dance, and that's just one of the many things that if you're there, you see, forget the food. Poor Joe had heartburn. He told me this morning from all the food. But,
I couldn't resist. It was so good.
But I just want to say to Kurt Shady and Nancy Angelini and their staff, great job. Very proud of you.
Thank you. Any other members?
Yeah, I had
Don.
somebody reach out to me the other day with asking for our help or for me to bring up a point. And so, Bob, what they asked or the comment was that the rooms, specifically at Brookside, are not being cleaned every single night. And there's concerns from some internal folks about the quality of the rooms with, using that outside cleaning crew. And I know that's going to be a topic here coming up over the next few weeks, if not a couple months anyway. So wondering if you could reach out to the principals and just ask them to speak with the teachers and get their feedback as to what their thoughts are and have that delivered back to us the next time we meet.
Will do. Bob, if I may, last night's function, I had the same situation. I had it very nicely done, very gracious, but one of the custodians approached me and he expressed some concerns and wanted to ask me what I thought was the best way to, get these concerns out. I said, well, you can't bring them to me and then now nobody wants to come forward. So, but he would like the opportunity to share these with us. So, just so you know, I heard it as well.
Okay, so in your case, you heard it from a custodian, or you heard it from
I
a staff
actually
member?
heard it from a custodian, yes.
Okay.
Who saw me there last evening, waited until I was probably very end, there weren't a lot of people around, and he approached me about it, and I told him that I would, listen, so.
Okay,
All right?
very well.
So definitely want to make sure we get on top of that. I'll echo that I have heard similar feedback about the just the attention to detail and overall cleanliness in some of the schools. Particularly Brookside was one of the ones that's been brought to my attention. We just it's just been a couple of years since we've went through a massive renovation project in that school, and want to make sure that we're doing the appropriate job of maintaining the same level of cleanliness. So
Okay, will do.
thank you. Any other announcements and correspondence?
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
I wanted to, I have a couple of distributions at your seat. One I thought would be helpful. You may have already received it, but sometimes it's easier to have something like this in hard copy for your own calendars.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's a list of events that are coming up tonight, obviously being one of those with the National Honor Society, but really beginning now in the month of May. You'll see all this, a number of events happening. So any of those, certainly the school committee is invited to attend. You may have received specific invitations for some of those events, but I thought that might be helpful for you. But then also a distribution just on which will relate to my presentation a little bit later brief presentation a little bit later about schooling and global skills around education. And then I wanted to just share a correspondence. This is from, that came from Pam Hennessy at the high school. And this is great, great news to share. So she had information from Carolyn Chaplin. Carolyn graduated last year. And she contacted Pam Hennessy, who was her teacher, to say that the Mass Bay credits that she earned through our early childhood education concurrent enrollment program. You know, we have some dual enrollment programs here. This one being in the Family and Consumer Science Department, the early childhood. It was accepted at Assumption College. Not only was it accepted, but the college accepted it to replace their Psychology of Child Development class, which is a required course for the Communication Science Disorders concentration. She was thrilled, Carolyn was thrilled, the student, as this puts her 3 credits ahead in a major that is noted for difficulty in being able to complete in 4 years' time. So she's Pam wanted to go on to say she's very proud of the opportunities we're able to offer students in Milford, and wanted to share this good news. And I think it was important for me to share that with the committee, because we are working hard to give Milford kids a leg up on completing some college credits before they leave here. And this is one example of a student saying, hey, this worked for me. Assumption took these credits from Mass Bay. Because there's been a thought that Mass Bay would only accept Mass Bay credits. And what this is important message is that other colleges, 4-year institutions, are taking those credits, which is great for our students. And so I'm sure that Carolyn is just one of many who will have this opportunity. I wanted to share that with the committee.
Excellent. Congratulations to her. That's fantastic. I just had 2 things. One, first and foremost, this evening, I had the opportunity, along with several other members, to attend the induction ceremony for the National Honor Society, and certainly want to congratulate the 48 seniors that are the outgoing members over the course of the next month and several weeks here, and also the 44 inducted members that congratulations to them as well as to their families. It was a very well attended event. The students did a tremendous job. You know, really just their attention throughout the entire program. It's about a 90-minute program, and just what a phenomenal job. Mr. Baudet and the orchestra were there playing. Again, just the tremendous talent that we have in the town of Milford never ceases to amaze me. So congratulations to the National Honor Society members. Also on Tuesday night, had an opportunity to attend the vertical concert for the orchestra that Mr. Baudet put on, along with the orchestras of it's amazing how he did it. It's from 3rd graders on up through high school, and each group comes up on stage and plays different selections and different music. And not only was he able to get that number of 3rd graders all playing the same song at the same time, he actually kept them entertained and engaged, as well as the audience as well. So all the way up through high school. So certainly congratulations to Mr. Baudet, as well as all the students who participated in that. Just did a fantastic job. So
Excellent.
the next thing we'll move on to is invitation to speak. Anyone here for invitation to speak? Seeing no one, we will move on to our next agenda item, which is the Shining Star Early Childhood Center Student and Teacher Handbook and School Improvement Plan. So we have Lucy, our director. If you would, that would be great. Would it make sense if we could move that cart, do you think? So that way we can maybe look at Lucy rather than rather than a cart. Great. Good evening, Lucy.
Hi.
Thank you so much for coming, as always.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thanks
it.
for having me. Do you want me to go over the handbook or the school improvement plan first?
Your choice.
They'll both be very quick. Why don't we do the handbook first?
Okay.
I had passed along a summary of changes. I assume that you all got them. So there's not a whole lot of changes other than the updated contact list and staff list and our updated schedule. The only 3 things that are currently under review right now are our head lice policy. Our Alert Now is changing, I believe, to Blackboard Connect 5.
That's correct.
And our bullying policy, we're also working on as part of the anti-bullying team, so that, I believe, will also be changed as well. So once we get those changes, I'll fit them into the handbook, and those will be changes. The only other thing that's not in here, and we talked about this at our leadership meeting on Tuesday with Bob and Kevin and Kathy, the Massachusetts student discipline statutes, we don't typically have them in our handbook. It's a little bit different for preschool. Same thing with Same thing with our bullying policy. We did add the bullying policy in the last year or two. And we did have one case last year. I don't know that it was really a legitimate case, but it was nice to have the policy to fall back on. I don't have the discipline code in the handbook, and I don't know that we need it. There's never been an occasion where we've had to suspend a student. Any student that, that may demonstrate some problem behavior are typically our children with special needs, and we would not suspend them anyway. In the event that a student brought a weapon, I don't see that happening at preschool. If it does, I don't know. I don't know what your thoughts are, if you think that this should go into our handbook.
Yeah, I think, Lucy, I would certainly defer to your judgment. You know this, you know this group and you know this age level and the education component certainly better than I would pretend to.
Okay.
And certainly open it up to other members if any other members have any feelings or thoughts to weigh in on that.
I would just try to say, keep it as flexible as you need it to be.
Okay.
You know.
I did speak with Lisa Burns. I go to her a lot since she used to be the director at the preschool, and so typically if I'll go on her handbook and I try to modify it so that it's similar to the kindergarten through 2, and I'll just kind of modify it for our kids. So if you're okay with that, that's what I'll do.
I think
And then
that's
do you want,
good decision.
and then we'll do, so any of the other changes that are made, I assume if it's approved tonight, then you'll know that those changes will be made as soon as everybody else makes theirs.
Yes.
Okay, so that's that. And then our school improvement plan, I basically went off of the district strategic plan, which we also worked on Tuesday. So the format has changed a little bit from the past. But if you look on page 5, our goals are consistent with the district strategic plan. I just added those in. On page 7, I had added in where it says plan and host a preschool orientation curriculum night for families. We always have an orientation night, and I know some of you have participated in that in the past. We don't typically have a curriculum night because we talk about our curriculum at open house, but for the next school year, we will have a curriculum night, I think, just to be in line with all of the other schools. So we are planning on doing that. On page 9, last year we had our board certified behavior analyst she consulted with one of our special education teachers and our occupational therapist, and we brought in the Second Step program, which is a curriculum for emotional and social needs into the preschool. It was very successful this year, so we're going to implement it into our 5 half-day program next year, and then we'll just transfer it into all of the classrooms the following year.
Okay.
Again, on page 12, family and community engagement, I just switched to Blackboard Connect 5 instead of Alert Now.
Just to give a quick update on what that is, Blackboard basically bought Alert Now, a system we adopted maybe 7 or 8 years ago. It's no cost for us. It's just a simple upgrade, but they actually call the Alert Now that we've been using their legacy system, which means that it's old, right? But the Blackboard Connect system we've been having taking webinars and training so we can make that conversion. So we'll do that before the year is out, which is why you'll see Blackboard probably, or a mass communication system reference in the improvement plans and the handbooks. So it's just a name change, but it's really the same system, same functionality.
Okay. On page 13, continue to explore additional programs to offer to the community and assess and evaluate the option of adding additional programs to meet the changing needs of families we serve. And in the past, when I've come before the committee, I've told you that based on the number of referrals we get for special education and the needs of our students that are coming into the preschool, we have to change our programs every year to meet those needs. So last year, because our full-day program was so popular, I wanted to open up 2 full-day programs this year, but then it turns out this year, not as many people enrolled in that one, so we went back to 1. We had a poor registration for the five half-day afternoon program last year, so we didn't even offer that this year. And we still continue to have low numbers for our afternoon program for some reason. One of our teachers, and this is something that we can think about for later, but one of our teachers had suggested that in order to alleviate so many people registering for our morning programs and not enough in our afternoon, so our 3 morning program is $120, and our 4 afternoon, I think, is $140. I might be off by $20 or $40. But we were thinking of offering the Red Star program, the 4 afternoon, at the same price as the 3 morning. And that way it's an incentive for some of our families. They'll get that extra day, but at the same price as the 3 mornings. I thought it was a great idea. I wish she had mentioned it before this year, because I think that would have helped with our numbers. Because what happens is we have such an overload in our 3 morning, our 2 morning, and our 5 morning, that we end up having to do a lottery for those classes. And then we offer the 4 afternoon, and a lot of parents will take it just because they want the preschool, but we do lose some families because they don't want the afternoons. So that's something to think about for next year.
I was gonna ask you, Lucy, so, if you had anything that you would kind of point to that was contributing to some of those low enrollments. Is it cost? Is that a piece of it, or is it just time, or is it space?
I think pretty much in the state, we're one of the least expensive preschools.
Yeah.
And I think it's just the afternoon session. 2 hours and 15 minutes is not a long time for a preschool session, and I think from, it starts at 11:45 until 2 o'clock. A lot of our younger preschoolers still nap. And, parents just like to get their stuff done in the morning and then take their kids home in the afternoon. I think it's just kind of a typical preschool thing. I don't know. I think, in the future we can look at other options, like maybe doing a 9 to 1 or a 9 to 2, or maybe it's going to be all full day at some point. I think parents are more interested in that. For our real young students, the 3-year-olds, parents typically like the 2 mornings because it's just 2 mornings.
Right.
So this year, I just think it depends on, just like, every year, the kindergarten enrollment. Some years you have so many, some you don't have as many. It's the same thing for us. And it also depends on the number of students that we get referred for special ed. So our numbers are pretty high going into the school year. I think I told you the last time I was here when we were thinking about space. We do, Meg Belcito and I went to the transition night at Early Intervention, and we met with some of our incoming parents. A lot of their students were just 2 years old, so we know who's coming. But this time next year, we will have to open up a new classroom.
I was gonna ask you, how are you doing on space?
We're okay. We're actually okay on space. And another thing that happens is we get referrals from Early Intervention, and typically on paper, there's a big difference between when a child is assessed at 2 years old or 2 years, 3 months. That's when we get the referral. So by the time we evaluate them, they may be discharged from Early Intervention, or a previous diagnosis may be taken away, or they're not as significant as we thought that they might be. So for instance, a lot of kids that are referred to us with a diagnosis of autism, by the time we get to them, they may be high-functioning autism. So they wouldn't be in our Milestones program, they would be in an inclusion setting. And if they go into an inclusion setting, that doesn't impact our class sizes or anything like that because we have the space. If they go into the Milestones room, it does, because we need to have enough space in the sub-separate classrooms. So next year we will have 2 substantially separate classrooms, so we're good.
Okay.
But this time next year, I believe we will have to open up another classroom for children with severe special needs, like our medically fragile room that we had years ago that's now at Brookside. That's what it looks like right now, and again, that can change because the parents that we've met of these children, they're just turning 2, so we don't know what's going to happen.
Do you have space currently if we needed to do that?
If that happens, we were going to do what we were going to do initially with Family and Community Network. So Sarah Humiston has her office and then 2 classrooms. One is for the groups, and then the other one is for office space. So all of her staff are in one office. We would move them down to the area between 2 of our classrooms. It'll be a little bit squished, but we would be able to use that room.
Okay.
So I think we can make it work. That's the goal.
Keep us updated as early as we can.
Yes.
I know you do a great job of keeping us in the loop on things. We generally do a pretty good job of, as long as we've got a little bit of time to plan, being able to hopefully get you everything that you need to be able to serve such a needy group that you and your team do such a phenomenal job with. So
Thank you. I think next year we're good. The year
Okay.
after, I'm not so sure. But
Okay.
we'll worry about that next year.
Where are the classroom pods from Woodland going?
Say it again?
Where are the classroom pods from Woodland going?
We haven't decided what the need is right now. They belong to the town, we own them, as a school department, so we'll see where the shift is, if there's a need for us to use them elsewhere.
I'm just saying, there's a thought, right?
Mhm.
You know, maybe could utilize one of those anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're very
Great.
nice.
Yes.
They're better than the school.
Mm-hmm.
They in fact are better than the school. That's true.
Best part.
And then the only other two changes on page 14, we just included, like I'm sure everybody else is going to, the adaptation of portions of the DESE educator evaluation tool, which we've been working on all year, the implementation of district-determined measures that we're actually working on with Dr. McIntyre on Tuesday at our contractual day meeting. He'll be talking to us because determining, measures for preschoolers is, we can do it, but it is very different than what you see at the elementary schools in the middle and high school. So we'll do the best we can with that. I think for next year, one of the things that I have to implement is dedicating more time for staff meetings. We don't do a whole lot of that this year because all of our morning and afternoon times are dedicated to IEP meetings. So it's very rare that we all sit together as a group unless it's a contractual day. So we'll do that ahead of time at the beginning of the school year. And then as far as professional culture, safety, and security, we have our safety team and we work with the whole district, so there's a bunch of us on that. The only other change I'm gonna make for next year, we have a login for all visitors, and they have their passes, and that's been great. I think for next year, though, during the school day, if any of the staff leave for any reason, that we'll have them log in and out. That way, if anything does happen, we'll know who's in the building and who's not. So that's the only other change we'll make for that.
Okay.
And that's it.
Any members have any questions? Mike?
Lucy, if I could, only because I was involved with a child that was medically challenged child. That student is now moved on to Brookside, you said?
No.
Oh, okay.
So we can't go over there can't be more than a 4-year age difference. So for right now, a student that we have now was not able to go with the 3 students that went on to Brookside.
Okay.
If that child were to move in, because there's a difference between him and the oldest student in the other room. So say for next year, if he were to move on with that other group, the oldest child would have to go somewhere else. A student that we're getting, I think that we're okay by 2 months. So we may be able to keep the student that we have for another year after this coming year, and we should be okay with any students that come in,
Well,
as long as their birthday is before June.
The reason I asked that question is, being involved, I know the care that the child gets on a daily basis, does that follow the child to the next school?
Oh, absolutely, yes. So for most of them, if they still have medical needs, they would still have a one-to-one nurse with them, and they would still get all of the therapies that they have now, as long as it's warranted. So they'll still get all of their PT, OT, speech. So yes,
Okay.
it pretty much follows them through as long as they
Thank
need
you.
it.
Any other members?
If you don't mind.
Jen?
Did you mention that there were kids that go full day?
Yes.
And are those typical peers, or is that just reserved for kids on IEPs?
No, all of our classrooms are inclusion, except for
Okay.
our milestone program, which is sub-separate, but most of those kids are included at some point during the day. So yes,
Okay.
last year was the first year, I think,
Okay.
that we offered a full-day program. It was very popular last year.
Yeah.
So how we arranged it was that it's typically our more significantly needy students that are in there, ones that require a lot of services. So if they had a lot of services, we want to extend their day so
Mhm.
they're not missing out on inclusion time.
Right.
And then we try to balance it with some of our strongest, typically developing peers, usually very strong language models.
Mhm.
We don't want to have a whole lot of behavior issues because we want to have a nice balance in the classroom. And so it was, actually, this is our second year, so we've had some great success in those classrooms. And I've rotated the teachers so they all get a chance to. And it's kindergarten readiness, so everything that they do is preparing for kindergarten. So you have to be kindergarten eligible the following year. So we don't
Okay.
have anybody that's 3 unless it's a student that's on an IEP that really needs all of that time.
Okay. I thought the whole plan was just so nicely done, and the whole thing, it goes along so nicely with everything that's happening in the elementary schools, and I especially like seeing the second step.
Oh, yeah.
And the fact that you mentioned that that's being rolled out for all students, it's so
Yes.
important for kids to have those regulation skills.
I agree.
Whether or not they have any kind of significant issue, it helps everybody. So I
Yes.
just compliment you. I think you did a great job with this.
Thank you. The format, again, I have to give credit to Lisa Burns. So, but thank you.
Any other members? Joe?
Lucy, you touched on the full-day program. Are you sensing that there's a demand for that from
Well, I thought
parents?
that there was last year because we had a waiting list. We certainly can fill it with students with special needs, but this year we have 4 students that are returning that signed up, and then 3 new students. So we only had 7 kids
Okay.
that are enrolled as regular ed students for next year, which we're a little bit disappointed in.
Yeah, I would expect that
Yeah.
there'd be more of a demand, but
The most popular class that we have this year is Blue Stars, which is 3 mornings, but because we have specific age criteria this year, which we didn't have in the past, that's a big one, and our 5 mornings everybody wants also. So that classroom is gonna be a little bit out of ratio, so typically our classes are 8 students with special needs, 8 typically developing students and 7 students who have special needs, so we always follow the 49-51 ratio. In our Purple Stars, which is 5 mornings, we're a little bit off. We have about 10 students, and they were 10 returning students. I didn't want to have a lottery for 3 students, so we accommodated all of them, because sometimes they, decide they want to go somewhere else or whatever, but nobody wants to go anywhere else. So we'll have 10 students, and then we'll have up to 7 children with special needs in that class. But I feel like we're okay with the ratios, because we do have a lot of adults in our classrooms. If you come down, I know Bob and Kathy and Kevin have been down, we have a lot of staff. We need it, but we do have a lot, so I feel like we're always okay with the ratios.
So you're the one revenue generating piece of each. You're the sole director and principal that actually makes money.
Oh, good.
So, that is in the black, so that's okay. That's good, and for what you do and the students that you're serving, it's important that you have the amount of staff that you have. So
I
you
agree.
guys do a great job.
Thank you.
Anything else,
So
Joe?
You touched on, and this is probably more a question for Bob, but you touched on the outstanding bullying policy. So is that something that we need to add, the policy subcommittee needs to add to our list?
We have the committee, by the bullying policy that we have requires that a group meet at least annually. So we put together a group to go back and review that plan. So it will be something that the policy subcommittee will take a look at, and then we'll bring it back to the full committee, just to make sure that we're constantly going back and making sure that we're in alignment with the law, and that what we're saying we're gonna do in this, what's called the bullying prevention and intervention plan that was required a couple years back. There's some specific things around curriculum in there that we have to improve upon.
Okay.
So there's a plan that goes along with the policies. There's not really any policy changes right now that I can anticipate, but there'll be changes to the plan. So they're sort of enmeshed. It's a little confusing, but we'll bring it back to the policy committee and see if there's a need to actually change the policy or not.
Okay.
And that's one of the policies that's sort of an annual review that
Right.
there's actually a number of policies as new members of the policy subcommittee. There's some policies that sort of have an annual review. That's one of them. That one's on a timestamp, and that one's, is it fall? When is that one up?
It changed because they changed the language around the anti-bullying law to include staff being bullied by staff and staff being bullied by students. That wasn't in the original legislation. So that one changed. So that's a kind of a technical change. But then there's other pieces that references the handbook that we want to make sure that are in check. So we pulled together a committee to do that work
Yeah.
already.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's something that, and
Yeah, it should take
Kathy and Bob will actually kind of, they'll bring to the policy subcommittee's attention
Right.
when there's something that's either time sensitive or there's been a change that needs to be addressed, so.
Yeah.
But I don't wanna keep Lucy here too much longer as we talk about
Past
the
her
policy
bedtime.
subcommittee, but, any other questions? But no, good questions. I think if we can table that to when we get to some of the policy subcommittee's updates, that would be great.
Thank you.
Anybody else have anything for Lucy? Lucy, thank you as always.
Thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure to see you. We do need to take 2 votes, if we can, from our committee members. The first one is for the acceptance of the student-teacher handbook. I can take I need a motion and then a second.
Motion, Mr. Chairman.
Motion from Mike, second from Joey. And all in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Then we do need a second vote, and this is for the adoption of the Shining Star Early Childhood Center School Improvement Plan. If I can take a motion from Jen, second from Joe. All in favor? It is unanimous and motion carries. Lucy,
Well,
thank you. Have a
great.
great night.
Thanks.
Enjoy.
Good night, Lucy.
Thanks, Lucy.
Move on to our next topic, which is the report of the superintendent of schools. It's you, Bob.
Okay, just a few, the first items are very quick. We belong to the Bi-County Collaborative, which allows us to have special placement services for students, whether they're behavioral or whatever they may be, that the district, if we don't offer them in the district, it's a very cost-effective way for us to provide services to students. I'm on that board of directors of all the towns that are part of the Bi-County Collaborative, but it's required under the law that every year that I'm voted back in. So I'll just need the committee to take a vote to have me appointed to the Bi-County Collaborative as a member of the board of directors.
Sure. Can you take a motion? Take a motion from Joey, second from Dawn. All in favor? Motion carries.
Okay, that's a quick one, and I won't read it to you, but just I wanted to provide in the packet, there's an update that goes in tandem with that vote that you took that shows the kinds of activities that happen in the Bi-County Collaborative, and happy to answer any questions that you may have on that. But it's been a very cost-effective opportunity for Milford. We've saved really hundreds of thousands of dollars of potential placements that are very affordable through this collaborative. Do we have transportation work with Bi-County? I don't realize that. I don't know if we do it ourselves. We don't.
If we do have a cost share, we usually call the district directly,
Okay.
and we'll co-share trips that way, but right now, all of our sped non-local and local are pretty full.
Okay. Very good. That's just an update. The third piece that I wanted to just give you a little bit of, and I won't spend a lot of time on it, but I think it'll be maybe interesting to the committee to sort of see what happened. So I returned back on Monday, so not even sure what day it is still. But I came back from China. I wanted to share some experiences. I don't know if anyone's had the opportunity to travel to China. It's a long way. I mean, really, it's a long way in a plane, but the education system, that was particularly special, because I wasn't seeing China necessarily as a tourist, although I did have a chance to.
Yeah, you're gonna need to grab a microphone, because though we can hear you loud and clear, the viewing public cannot.
More like Wayne Newton.
Now I'm gonna put the lights out. It's okay to take a little nap.
No, not at all. This is a good educational experience, so.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, because when you travel, when you travel to most places, you do it in a hotel and you see it sort of from the sightseeing view. From my experience, it was living in a home for a good part of the trip. So I wanted to just show some of the differences, because I think we all too often we hear about the education in China or anywhere else, and how we should be more like those countries, and I'm here to tell you that we should be very proud of what we do in America, which may be a little different than you expected. Yeah, would you mind? So this is part of the Administrator Shadowing Project, and this is an invitation. This is funded. There's a lot of funds that the Chinese government is putting forward, really to educate the world about the Chinese education system. But more in part, not so much as a propaganda move about what's happening in China, but more to say we also want to learn from other countries. This is being we, China, wants to learn. They're in the middle of a school reform effort over the next few years. So it was an opportunity for me. I had applied through this. It was hosted by the Cambridge Institute of International Education and the Hebei Education Department, which is the region, the provincial region of China. And it was for selected Massachusetts and Pennsylvania administrators. So there's about 19 of us in all from Massachusetts and from Pennsylvania that had this opportunity. And there's my business card in Chinese, by the way. And every time I said my name in Chinese to people trying to say it, no one ever understood it in China. So I was definitely, I was definitely not very good with Mandarin, but they could read the card. So that was pretty cool. So let me just
So how do you
walk
say
us through. Sui Ze Hai. Sui Ze Hai. And it's actually not a direct translation of my name, but it's somebody gave me this sort of, I don't know, I guess there's some symbolic thing about the ocean there. Well, I know, but the way they capture things in characters, it's not a verbatim translation. It's really more sort of sound associations. And I don't know the ocean reference, but they thought that would fit me somehow.
Is that your first name, or is that actually?
Yeah, Sui Ze Hai is just my name. It's just Robert Tremblay.
Okay.
Yeah, in Chinese.
I'll have to remember that.
You have to remember that one. Sui Ze Hai. Yeah.
That's
There you
not
go.
my call, yeah.
For some reason, that's not working. Hope I can advance these slides.
Dr. McIntyre never has trouble with it.
I know, he's the PowerPoint guy. Kevin, what's wrong? Why can't
Different PhD program.
Why can't I? Yeah. Oh, no, come on now. All right, so this is the, like a Woodland campus. This is the school that I,
Bob, do me a favor. Please don't show that picture and send it.
this is the school campus where I was at, just to give you an idea of the scope of it. So this is the school campus.
How many students are in that
It's
school?
about 7,000,
Yeah.
and that's grades 7 through 12.
Wow.
Yeah.
And those obviously are dorms now?
There are some dorms, so about 3,000 of the students live on campus. So for those families, the parents will drop them off on a Monday morning, pick them up on a Friday. If you think traffic is bad on Main Street in Milford, you ought to see 3,000 cars on a one-way street outside the school picking up, their kids for the weekend. It is a scene to behold.
Wow.
And as you'll see from some of the other slides, that not everybody's in cars. They throw them in the back of a bike or on a scooter. It's just incredible. I sent my wife some photos. She said, "Where are their helmets?"
What's the purpose of having them in dorms?
The parents will pay, but for some of them, what ends up happening is the way that schools are structured. There's a junior level school and a senior level school. So if you can imagine, junior 1, 2, and 3 is grades 7, 8, and 9. Senior levels 1, 2, and 3 are grades 10, 11, and 12. So what happens is students have to pass an exam after grade 9 that affords them the right to go to grade 10. Not everyone passes that, and you get one shot at it. And so if you fail that exam, you may not be able to go on to grade 10. You might just enter the workforce.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Or you could attend a school elsewhere that allows you to go to that school that doesn't meet the criteria. Maybe there's sort of a lower standard. That school might be, 80 miles away.
Right.
So in some cases, the dorms are necessary because the kids, there's no busing.
Okay.
So for about 3,000 of these students, they live on campus, and then the parents have to pay for that. For the remainder of the students, they may just, finish the grade 9 exam, pass successfully, and then continue on to grade 10. So here's just a little bit of a view. I wanted to break this down by an overview of sort of the Chinese system, the provincial system, and then specifically the school that I was at. So there are over 230 million elementary to high school students in China. I won't read all these slides to you, but this is the configuration. Kindergarten, elementary school is considered grades 1 through 6. Then you have the middle school, which is really this junior that I just described, the high school. Vocational school is interesting because they really don't do much with the hands-on. In fact, one of the Chinese reform efforts is to do more with hands-on learning. They do very little. It's very much a lecture-based format. And then the adult education, college and university. So there's a 9-year compulsory. You must attend 6 years of elementary school and then 3 years of middle school. And after that, that's all. There's ordinary schools versus key schools. That's just is sort of what I described about the more selective schools versus sort of your traditional schools. And the school that I was at, and which I've brokered a relationship for Milford kids, is one of the top three schools in the province. So we're not sending Milford kids, if we do send a group there, like for an experiential visit, we're not sending them to one of the lower quality schools. We're sending them to one of the top. So there's this really high academic caliber there. And vice versa, if those students are coming here from there, you're dealing with the top echelon of kids who've made that grade 9 hurdle and have also made the grade 12 hurdle or are going to make that grade 12 hurdle. So special education was very interesting to find out. I had probed quite a bit on some of these questions. some of the staff who've been following the blog had asked me, hey, while you're there, why don't you see how the arts, for example, are integrated, or how is technology used in classrooms? And so I went there with some homework in mind. Interestingly enough, the special education, the definition there really is educating blind and deaf students. That's not about putting, like Lucy was describing here, kids who are anywhere on the spectrum. This is like a physical handicap. That's special education. There are 149 special education schools in the province. Give you an idea of how big that is. But it's only for deaf and blind students. I wasn't able to get into one of those schools, though I did ask. They didn't get me there. So if you're a special needs child in the system, you can imagine that you may or may not make it past that grade 9 hurdle. So you're not going to see a lot of special needs kids. There's no kids on IEPs and no special education teachers. So either you make it on your own or you don't. So it's very different, and this is why I made the comment earlier that you hear a lot of comparisons. We should be more like China. We should get grades more like those kids. Well, it's the best and the brightest scores that you're comparing American scores against, and we, as you know, educate everybody. Very different comparison. I would not say apples to apples. So this is after the compulsory school attendance. Like here, ours is 16, so theirs kind of falls out around grade 9. Maybe a little bit younger. They can either enter the workforce, a vocational school, which there are not a lot of opportunities, or they can go into high school, the ordinary schools, or the key schools. So the school that I attended was a key school. The structure here is not very similar actually to the U.S. models, government-owned. What does get interesting though, and you get a sense of this is the numbers of schools in that region. 4,000 kindergarten schools. It's just some of this just blows your mind with just the sheer numbers of a country that has nearly 1.4 billion people. And by the way, nobody likes to wait in line there. I discovered that. Yeah. Incredible, just the cultural things you experience living there. The structure, principal or party secretary, there's vice principals in the schools. The school that I attended, there were 4 vice principals, 1 principal for 7,000 students, 4 vice principals. And then various department heads and directors of supporting. It might be supporting curriculum or supporting instruction or whatever it might be. All right, this is sort of the DESE level in the Hebei province, talking to us. So it was a very formal setting, speaking to us. They had a translator there, of course, for both us speaking to them in English and vice versa. This just gives you some idea of the population of this province is 70 million. It just gives you an idea of the sheer size of it. 25,000 schools that they oversee, 13 million students, 900,000 faculty, 10,000 preschools. So the numbers just are pretty staggering. 615 high schools. That's a lot to watch.
Bob, what were you saying that you were in a city that had how many 30-story apartment buildings?
Yeah, so I'm coming up to the to the city that I was in. So yeah, there was actually they were building. They had what was the number? They're 30-story buildings. Well, I was staying in 30-story. They had roughly 30-story buildings. They were building 7,000 of them. 7,000 in the city. Give you an idea. And so they're just building everything up to accommodate the masses of people. Incredible size. So their capital, when they consider capital investment in their schools, they're looking to make sure they have enough desks and chairs. That's where they're starting from. Students and families must purchase their own textbooks. And here's an interesting one. Families who cannot contribute money to support the education system will often work to provide construction services or other trade needs. So if you can't afford the bill for the books, you're going to have to help us build something or do something for the. So it's in that way, it's very much a community.
Wow.
That's their sort of capital plan. Teaching is very interesting. I'm looking forward to doing a presentation with teachers on this one. So the salaries are very different than the American salaries. This won't work to the teacher's advantage, so I won't go too deeply into this one, the school committee. But you get an idea here of just some of that. What's interesting, this bullet here, they operate on if you can imagine this one, sometimes they've operated on a 6-month IOU. In other words, we don't have enough money right now, but in 6 months we're going to pay you. And that could happen. That's not abnormal, not uncommon to have teachers just working on a promise. salaries versus work ethic, and then teachers belong to a union, which is interesting to me in a country that's a communist country, still that's looking to, feeling sort of democratic in many ways. The teachers are actually unionized, but really not about wages and benefits. It's unionized about just maybe more about curriculum projects and more about continuity and having consistency across the instruction. Really not, it's not about collaborative bargaining like we would have it here for unions.
Hey,
It's
Bob,
just
when you say,
school-based decisions.
I apologize,
Oh, yeah.
Bob, when you say salaries versus work ethic, what does that mean?
Well, I guess what I mean here is that they're only teaching, in some cases, 2 classes a day, but they're going to stay at school. They're going to get there half an hour before their contractual time would begin, and they often will stay until school ends, which is at 9:30 at night or later. So even though the salary will be probably a fraction of what our teachers make, their work ethic is just that much, greater. They're not working for the hours. I'm punching in, punching out.
Much longer work days, it sounds like.
Oh yeah. What's interesting is there's one of the days I was trying to reach the teacher. I was staying with a teacher who taught history, and I needed to reach her, so I had my translator call, and he said, well, I can't get a hold of her. I said, oh, you know where she is? She said, oh yeah, well she's taking a nap. This is 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I just thought it was comical. I can never imagine at Milford High School trying to get a teacher taking a nap. But when you're working from 7:30 in the morning until 9:30 at night, and you're having a 2-hour lunch break, you're going to have a break and you're going to have a rest, which is really very common. The kids will rest. The kids will go home and have lunch. Some of them, others will have lunch at the school. They have so you talk about Common Core here. So they have a national curriculum, and it's really amazing going from one classroom to the next classroom. It was like I was seeing the same lesson just over and over and over again, because they are literally on the same page at every school across China. This is some of the topics they'll cover in their general classes, mostly around math, science. They do have some physical education, which is different than what we might think. They have some. They'll do some martial arts as part of their experience. The art is like traditional Chinese art. See like those fans and things, painting those fans, or Chinese calligraphy. So it's very different than what we'd see here. I was hoping I would find my way to a music class. There's something comfortable for me to go in and observe. And there's not that. There's a music sort of music theory class, but there's no orchestra like we saw tonight. There's no what a great potential to have a school of 7,000. What an amazing orchestra you can have. There isn't one. There's just students who want to study that will study it on Saturday, because their focus is school and only school. These are some of the curriculum reform efforts, as I mentioned before. Using your hands, they want to have more of a hands-on approach. So they were very interested to know from the Americans that were there about how we do more with vocational programming. They think we have it right. They really do think we have, because there's not a lot of creative thinking coming out of China or innovation. You have a lot of manufacturing and smart people, and some innovations there, but working together and is just something that the American culture does much better, and they want to learn from that. So it's a 2,000-year-old system in place that they're pretty much still using. This is an interesting quote. This is from this person spoke at the delegation. But for better schools, parents will pay more for their children to attend. This is driving up student enrollment to 70 kids per class in the better schools. So even in the high-end schools, looking at class size between 70 and 100 for some of these class sizes with one teacher, no aides. Again, as I mentioned before, the learning from us on how to improve teaching models. So there's a lot of that good sharing. I met with administrators. I met with the sort of central office level people, the state level people, department heads in the school, students, and just to have this kind of sharing. The tuition is, and then there's an awful lot of corruption still. So school selection really is who you know. Still a lot of that, who you pay off, and there's tuition payments. They're working to change this as part of the reform. This is an interesting point, I thought, that the attitude about schools being alike is challenging. So they know they need to make a change, but the older generations of Chinese people don't want to see that change. It's like their rich history and their long culture of 2,000 plus years in the schools, they don't really want to see these changes happen. So they're getting a lot of parent pushback in this kind of reform effort. It kind of worked for me. Why shouldn't it work for my kids? but they are looking at how to better customize learning for students. This is the in the Hebei province. This particular I thought was a town or community, before I left, of this town of Shijiazhuang. But it's actually 10 million plus people there, so this is a good size. This is no little town. About an hour and a half away by high-speed train from Beijing, and so this is a nice, pretty picture of a view of the city. Some of their hiring practices in the schools. So they do psychological exams. They assess. I asked this question. I said, how do you assess their high moral standards? I asked this to the Ministry of Education, because they have to assess them and their moral aptitude. Still not sure how they do that. I didn't really get a clear answer. They do an interview written exam. This is so that teachers can get into the teaching force. On average, teachers are 40 years old and teach for about 15 to 20 years. They have typically 3 to 5 year contracts, including bonuses, and bonuses are based on performance, professional credentials, and feedback from teacher colleagues and students, and do not exceed 10% of the teacher's salary. So much of what you're sort of seeing and it's being contested in the Massachusetts Educator Evaluation System, and it gets to about getting student feedback and parent feedback, that's already part of that system. What's interesting too is that in many of the classes that I was in, because teachers are only teaching 2 periods out of the day for the most part, although they're there for a long day, the other teachers are not just sitting in their office. They'll do some of that work collaboratively planning, but the rest of the time they're in other classes evaluating those teachers. So it's all a peer evaluation model.
So Bob, are you saying that it takes them that long to get into the system out of college? Or are you just saying the average age is 40?
On the average age is 40. Yeah, it doesn't take them that
all
long.
right. So they do like the American system,
Yeah,
come
they
in
get
out
in
of
that.
college?
That's correct.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
The instructional model, 35 weeks of teaching, they actually have a very similar model. They have summers off, like we do. They don't have a February and April vacation, but they do have a 3-week holiday, their spring festival they call. I think it's in January or so. And that's their longer break when they do most of their vacationing holiday. So it really falls along much of the same kind of our calendar. They do 4 weeks of assessment. So I think our assessment's bad. 4 weeks. That's 4 weeks, 5 days a week of assessments. It's all about testing. The morning session, as you see there, from 8 to 12:15. They take a break for lunch. Many will go home or go to their dorm. They'll have lunch at the school or have lunch at home, take a nap at home or whatever they may be, or in their dorms, or just hang out with their friends. And then the afternoon session starts from 2 to 5. And then for the elementary kids, they'll go home at that point or go back to their dorm at that point. The students who are in the middle and the high school level begin their evening session at 7. And they go from 7 to about 9:30. So they're going to school basically, some of them from 7:30. The school starts at 8 o'clock in the morning, but they have duties at beginning at 7:30 to clean the school. So all the students have there's really only one custodian. It's actually a trash lady, and she takes out all the trash after the kids pick it up. And I'll show you her trash truck in a second. But the kids come in and they do all the cleaning. They don't do necessarily a great job, by the way, of the cleaning, but but you see them washing walls, washing windows, washing floors. So they're learning that. 10 minutes break between classes, and they have morning exercise, and they do eye exercises, things to help them stay focused. Third period every day, and I have a picture of this of the kids. They do a around the track by homeroom, and they do 3 laps of a high step march and 2 laps running. And the whole time they're being evaluated on their performance by other teachers. So some of the professional culture, which would be interesting when I present this to the staff about the sort of expected to observe each other regularly. And I mean, only just one colleague. There could be 9 or 10 of them in the room, in addition to the 70 kids. And they're all the teachers in the back taking notes to evaluate that teacher. Common planning times made available. They have a shared office, which I'll show you in one of the pictures. And as you'll see in the later slide, the staff members move from class to class, and students remain in the same classroom. They don't have any lockers there, and they have a tremendous amount of materials, reading, books and things. There's just no way they could move that from class to class easily on a campus that size. So they move the teachers around. Technology integration is one of the tasks that I was asked to look into. They have, because of the restrictions they have, if you're familiar with that, so they can't get onto YouTube. Social media is not an option. Google pulled out of China, so you can't get onto Google there. So when I was there, I was able to get out of the country and do the blog post and get onto Google through a virtual private network, a VPN, that I had set up. It's illegal to have a VPN if you're a Chinese national. It's not if you're a foreigner. At least I was hoping that was the case. So I didn't get detained. So
Good news, you're back.
good news, I'm back here. But my understanding, Don, you might know that more from your travels too, if that's been a
I never went to China.
never sure. So it's interesting coming out of trying to communicate out of a country requires a visa like that. Online course development, they are doing a lot of that. I thought this was interesting. Some schools have their own satellite to broadcast to other schools in more remote areas of China, because you're talking about the big city schools, but there are a lot of, as you can imagine, rural communities that don't have the benefit of the education that kids in Beijing or Shijiazhuang or Shanghai are getting. Online sharing among teachers, but there are some frustrations about using websites because they just can't access the material. So technology integration, more than anything, is a microphone at the front of the classroom to speak to the whole class, because so you don't have to project over 100 kids. Although there are 100 quiet kids, they're not talking in class. They're focused. So you see the school uniforms there. I actually brought one of these back from Melissa as a gift, which is pretty funny. But these are their uniforms, and you notice the students all kind of look alike. Their haircuts, the girls have the requirement at the schools. The girls have a similar haircut. It's short. It's not distracting to the boys, and they're not allowed to, absolutely not forbidden to date through high school. The focus is school, and so everyone sort of looks a lot alike in the uniforms, and they can customize their own shoes though. But the hair is specified in the uniform as well. This is me with a English teacher in the class. You see the class sizes there, roughly. I mentioned before about special education. I talked about that already. Only 6 of the 11, this is an interesting statistic as well, only 6 of the 11 provincial cities have special schools, so therefore only half of the students can actually attend high school if they're deaf, blind, or have mental problems. So you talk about here how we serve everybody and how the programs Lucy's talking about, and this is what makes you say, geez, we really do well by our kids. The traditional role of teachers, they're there to deliver knowledge, implement the curriculum, manage the classroom, and evaluate students. The new expectations, though, in this reform that they're hoping is to create a friendlier learning environment. It's all lecture format right now. There's not a two-way dialogue. Improved use of interactive technology. They want to help students attain good study habits and skills. And then the care for, which I think is great. It's really impressive, for all the negativity I've kind of presented here, is they want to find a way to care for the all-around development of students and prepare them for their future work. So they really have a vision for improving the system, but the big hang-up is that the parents of those kids don't necessarily want that. So you have parents that are kind of pushing back on what the administration sees as the right thing to do. Obligations, 2 to 3 classes or blocks per day, school meetings, department meetings once a week, and then office hours. And here's just a typical example of this is the language office. So you have a lot of teachers who will work here. I met a teacher from who's Italian. She's there from Italy. She's teaching for the year, teaching English, but yet fluent in Chinese. Just stuff that makes you say, wow, he's just so talented that these teachers are there. This is the sort of the foreign language office where I spent some of my time. And that's very typical staff offices. Here's an example of some of the Chinese view of education. So this is the sort of the first day on every Monday. You can see, the rows are unbelievable. Just to walk on this field, there's 7,000 students on an athletic field, shoulder to shoulder, exactly shoulder to shoulder, ahead of each other, behind each other, sides of each other. Completely quiet, at attention. There's a student on the stage. After they raise the flag and recognize their national anthem, there's a student that will be selected by the department heads to talk about the value of education, about being a good student, studying, the importance of study skills. It's all student generated there. Just an example over here. This is one of the third block. These are the kids taking a lap, and they'll do that, and you'll see the close formation. They're being watched. And I'll show you that. This is the new direction for Milford. So why are we doing this? This is me and the principal of the school. I did finally meet her. I was surprised that I hadn't met her the first day, actually. But I didn't meet her until sort of the end of the week. I guess with a school that size, I suppose. But we have 4,300 kids here, and I probably would have made the time on the first day to meet the guest. But what's important here is that Milford schools now are one of the few in the state of Massachusetts, as I mentioned in previous meetings, and this might be new information for Jen and for Joe, So it's sort of this international school designation. We have approval from Homeland Security to allow students to study here. The students that would come here to study, they may come here for an experiential. They may visit with us, for a week or so. And the exchange is, and I wanted to make sure I saw the school firsthand. If we send our students, say a group of 10 students into this environment, I wanted to make sure that I had seen it firsthand as well. Students that would come here to study year long would be tuition-paying students, and they are I think the whole cost for them to study in the U.S. is about $30,000, $12,000 of which goes to the school, and the remainder goes for their housing accommodations and tutoring if they need that. That's all handled through the Cambridge Institute. They do all the screenings, they handle the visas, and so forth. So this is a good step for Milford. We now have added to our exchange with France, Italy, Spain, and now a little further to China.
It's gonna be quite the culture shock if we ever send kids over there.
It
They're
will
in school
be.
From 7 a.m. to.
I think that a week is about all I would send our kids for, and I don't, unless we were establish a Mandarin program where a student really wanted to immerse in that language. I don't see us doing the same of a year-long study there. I don't see it. I don't see. It's just so different. We talk about the culture shock. Unless it's the right kid who really wants that experience, and there may be that kid out there. I don't want to close that door, but I definitely see that there's an interest, as you can imagine. These great kids who want to set themselves apart from the other millions of kids, when they get to that grade 12, they want to come here. They want to go to Harvard, and they want to have an American diploma to get there because that will set them apart from the other millions of kids. So there's tremendous motivation for them to come here. There may not be so much for us to go there, unless it's more just the experience of the culture. But for them, it's a chance to actually make a living, where they won't have that opportunity in China.
We should make them feel comfortable by staying in class until 9 o'clock.
We should, yeah, absolutely.
Hey.
Set up the classrooms the same way they do in China.
One of the things that would be interesting to take a look at is see if there's any way that we could make a connection with some of the schools that are over there that do actually cater to, for instance, some of the embassy schools. Two of my family members have been over in Beijing for the last 7 years, are both teachers.
In the embassy schools?
In the embassy schools.
Yeah, that would be great.
And see if maybe we could do almost a hybrid of, all right, we'll have you get the exposure to and the culture of living there. My cousins who live over there have 2 children
Okay.
who are in school. And they are actually both have become fluent in Mandarin. Their ages are 12 and 9.
Okay.
So it's quite an experience, and if it was something that was interested of kind of doing an exchange and at least getting some immersion into it,
Yeah.
that may be one way to be able to do that. I don't know any of the logistics. This is something just as you're speaking, it came in my mind. So
Yeah, if you have
we
any
can
leads on the names, I'd be happy to explore that.
yeah, I mean, these are very close family members of mine, so I'm certainly happy to
Yeah. if you
come back. In fact, actually, for Dr. McIntyre, my cousin now, after 6 years of teaching there, he is now the director of curriculum for the school. So
Oh, that's
this is his
fantastic.
first year as a curriculum director. So certainly we can hopefully get some connections there that may even help with some part of this program as well, and maybe not a full immersion into the type of schools that you've experienced, because I agree with you, there's a significant culture shock,
Oh, yeah.
but maybe a hybrid of that.
Sure, that'd be great. Love to explore it. Yeah, and you mentioned about the children. It got me thinking. If you weren't aware, I wasn't aware of the one-child rule in China. There's a big change happening. So generations past, you could have as many kids as you want. The recent generations is a one-child rule. They now have changed that so you can actually have a second child, provided that the mother or the father is an only child. One of them has to be an only child. And before you can have a child, even your first, you need to have approval from the Ministry of Families. So you sort of be thinking ahead when you have kids there. You know, with a population of 1.4 billion, I guess you have to control it somehow. But they're building 7,000 high-rises in this one city, so something to behold. So the couple of shots, I just thought it would be fun to share. Obviously, my first visit, this is a shot that I took from the Great Wall, which I thought, by the way, was all pretty flat. And it turns out it's a lot of stairs. And they're not even stairs. And it took 280 years to build the wall, 13,000 miles long. Not all of it is intact. It's an amazing, obviously one of the wonders of the world. But people who built the wall, many of them died while they were doing it, and then they just became the wall. So when they died, they just, put them in. They became the bricks. The bricklayers became the bricks. So as you're, it's just the amazing history when you're standing on a wall like this looking out. It's just incredible. This is, again, Shijiazhuang, the city that I was in. Just some shots of it for you to see.
Was it on the water bar?
There is a body of water there, like a river.
Okay.
But most days didn't look like this. A lot of times because it's the way it's sort of in a bowl, the way this particular city is, and there's a lot of pollution. You see a lot of people wearing masks certain times of the year. You may recall that from Beijing, even when the Olympics were there.
Yes.
But the runners had a hard time acclimating to and so it's very common to see people, younger people in particular, who are wearing masks. In fact, I always thought when I was there, I didn't see the sun really until I came back home. It just looked like a hazy day until I realized that many times it's just the pollution. They're working to improve that. They're planting thousands and thousands and thousands of trees everywhere to try to absorb some of that, and they're trying to regulate the factories better. They heat in the winter through coal, so those smokestacks are puffing out coal smoke. This is by night. I mean, it's like New York City. You think about it, just in terms of size. This is where I lived. This is the apartment building I lived in on the 22nd floor. They had Kenny G playing in the elevator. It became the most annoying music. I like Kenny G. Or that thing's all right, but that was the elevator music. It was really truly elevator music. They were playing, so every day up and down the 22nd floor, I'd hear Kenny G playing. And this is the I guess I call him the host father. I stayed with him at his house. This is just a little landscape area in the front of this apartment complex. This is in the house. Tea is big, obviously in China, but even in the households, they'll do. The first thing I did when I got there was to have tea with the family. And the mother here, she's a history teacher in the school in grade 9, and her background before going into education actually was tea, and so she taught me all about making tea and how to serve tea, and I had a lot of tea. This is, a lot of tea. I got a suitcase full. This is the vice principal of the school, one of the vice principals, one of the 4, and so she was. They're very close. They picked me up at the airport. Not a lot of English between the two of them, and I don't have any Chinese, so it was a quiet car ride. Then when I finally got to the house, they had internet access. I could use Google Translate and just show them things that were translated to characters, which worked really, really well, actually. And then I had some books that I would use and a lot of hand gestures. So I wanted to play table tennis. That's the big sport there. So
How'd that go?
Well, all right. So the gentleman that I was staying with, he said, we should go play table tennis with a friend of mine. So I figured it'd be somebody who's in their 40s, in the same age roughly as the guy I was staying with. Then he brings me, to this guy at his apartment building. This is like on the, so I'm thinking to myself, I can play all right. This guy's an old man.
It's Mr. Miyagi.
It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. So I'm playing this guy, and we had a really good game, good volley going, and I said, I'm keeping up with him. Then he starts to move back, and then he was probably 10 feet away from the table, when he was playing, and then I had I swapped out so my host family father could get in there and play, and then I saw how table tennis is supposed to be played, and the guy was just clearly just going easy on me. It was incredible when I watched these guys play. They must have volleyed without stopping for 20 minutes, and they were hitting the thing, like an ace of a serve. I'd never seen anything like it. The guy's calm as could be. So that's like a national sport there. All the kids learn to play table tennis at school. There's table tennis tables everywhere. But I had fun. This is my translator at the school. So she's a college. She's graduating from college. Doing her internship in the school and attended the school herself, and so she's looking to teach abroad. These are the little flags that I gave out right here. These little American and Chinese flag pins. I gave those as little token gifts to kids, and they were very, very appreciative of that. This is another photo of the students. I have 6,000 here, but actually it was 7,000.
Well, you look at the haze blob in the background.
Yeah, you think it's just a kind of haze in the morning.
Yeah.
That does not burn off. So that's another consideration too of sending kids. I don't have a problem sending our kids there for a week or so. I have more of a problem sending them there for a year in some of the environmental. Besides the culture shock, there's a lot of work to do in terms of pollution. But I mean, look at the sneakers are all different. But look at these kids. I mean, they're just perfect rows. Everyone standing at attention. This is part of the flag raising ceremony. Kids doing the exercise, morning exercise, while they're being scored. There's the staff scoring the students as they go around. Cleaning up in the courtyard. They're not really working that hard though. You know, they're just kind of holding, kind of holding the brooms.
It's the one time a day they're not being
Yeah,
evaluated.
right. Right.
It's probably can't be that dirty if they're doing that every day.
In every period of the day, actually. Yeah, because this group might be out here doing this, but there's another group that comes on
Yeah.
40 minutes later. So they're cleaning throughout the day. But someone needs to teach them about changing the water when they clean the bathrooms, because they use the same water all day long too. So there's just some hygiene things that need to be.
It's gotta get dirty with 7,000 people there.
Oh yeah, yeah. This is just a shot from the first floor. This is the junior high school building, first floor. You know, all the, just to give you a sense of what it looks like there. This is just the class, you know, the class sizes here. You see how close the kids are working, you know, side by side.
What does the HBGJX mean?
That's just the provincial name
Okay.
of the school, the Hebei something. It's a Chinese translation, so I don't know what the Chinese letters mean. So this is why they don't have backpacks and go to lockers, because this is their typical workload on their desks. You know, so there's no rules.
Wowza.
This is the so this is a poster you'll see on every floor. These are basically the top achieving kids in their class, and they're reminded every day of who the top achieving kids. And all the kids want to get on this chart, so they're reminded who the top achievers are, and the top achieving homerooms. This is a cafeteria. This is actually one of 3 cafeterias, and each one serves 1,500 kids, and they feed them at the same time. So 4,500 kids will have lunch in this. There's on this cafeteria. And there's one on each floor. There's 3 floors in the building. So grade 7's on the first floor, grade 8's on the second floor, grade 9's on the top floor.
That's a lot of cheeseburgers.
That's a lot. Yeah, a lot of noodles and rice.
A lot of tea.
A lot of tea. The most of them get to school. This is there's probably 10 or 15 rows like this. It's just one row of how the kids get to school in the morning. So there's no buses. They walk to school. They take bikes. Interesting people that I met. You know, obviously I have a lot of photos, but just a few to share. You know, this guy loved taking his picture taken. You know, but you just see like the variety of people. Like this guy here who's struggling to move whatever it is in the back of his truck. All these mopeds. There's no rhyme or reason to the traffic. Traffic signals are all just a suggestion. Crosswalks mean absolutely nothing.
Oh, it's like 1:28 in the morning.
It's like driving on 128. In fact, one of the times I saw a guy like much like this on the highway at night. We drove by. I'm like, how's this guy alive? So there's no particular rules. You just go when you can go in traffic, like this, with these kids. My wife was horrified at this shot. 3 kids in the back of this thing.
Horrified you were going to get her one of those.
Yeah. My kids loved it when I saw that picture. It was like fun. But going into traffic like that, or the back of mopeds or back of bikes. That's the trash truck. So all the kids will throw the trash away, but then there's a hired person that will drive, and you can't see the top of it. The trash is like up here, and they'll just drive the trash to some place, I don't know where. That's kind of what it looks like. So that person, that's their vehicle to get the trash. It's pretty third world when you consider that it's in a city of 10 million. You know, in that regard. And this is a guy selling fish. I thought it was kind of interesting. So that's the fish. Those are the fish heads, and that's the little cleaver. I just, you get a good price for fish on the street, but hopefully that wasn't selling to the school. I just thought it was kind of a funny shot. This is me learning to make tea in China at a tea house, and then finally just the forging of our relationship with this school district. So that's the presentation. Just it's a very high level overview. Obviously, there's a lot more details go along with it, but I wanted to give you just a flavor of what I've done for the last couple of weeks. So thanks for the time to share that with you. Are there any other questions? I know you asked along the way, or any questions? Or
Hope you passed that business card the proper way.
I did, both hands.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
They received it the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, every student. So what Don's talking about that I didn't know before I went there. hand your business card, you know, like this with 2 thumbs, and you receive it the same way. When I handed the students the pins, every one of them, you know, they all accepted it, 2 hands out, and just there's a lot of respect. But
So-
thank you very much. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
So just a quick question.
Yeah.
Was there anything that you took away from that experience that you thought, oh, I'd like to implement this when I get back, or I'd like to give this some
I heard
consideration?
lots of them.
That contractually and based on collective bargaining agreements, we're able to.
Yeah, right. Well, you know, I did like the shared office space for prep periods. You know, and the fact that not every teacher has their own classroom. Teachers will move around. And that's kind of what's happening with school design, too, actually. The new schools are not designed to have a teacher have their own rooms, but it's really more for teachers to move. Because the kids need the space, but you don't need to have as much space, you know, if you don't have every teacher have their own room. But the idea of teachers working in the same space, almost like a cubicle, they can network and talk more easily without having to have a scheduled prep to do it. So I don't know how practical it is for us to do it, but I did like that idea.
Well, what I liked about that is just kind of thinking about it. If you think about it just purely from an efficiency and numbers perspective, what makes more sense, moving 15 kids or 1 teacher?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's one of those just, you take that common sense component to it, so.
And Woodland School actually will have some of those elements. It's not designed to be, every teacher has their own class, especially around specialists, they'll move around to some, you know, we have those, the classrooms that are the pull-out rooms in the little areas, so for teachers to share some of those spaces. But a lot of takeaways, you know, happy to go, happy to come home, and to realize that, you know, we're doing some great things in the American education system, and we have an awful lot to be proud of educating the whole child and getting everybody where they're at.
Excellent. Thanks, Bob.
So I hope I didn't go too long with that, but I do thank you for the opportunity to share that, and for the opportunity to go and travel there, too.
No, I think that was good. Any other members have any other questions?
Does the Cambridge Institute support sending any of the high school teachers over to give them kind of that same experience?
They
that
do.
you
We
had?
talked about this experience. So if we wanted to, for example, and I'll be looking at this to see, doing a parent survey for interest, if there was an interest for Milford to have a Mandarin Chinese program as one of the languages offered at the high school, it would come at no charge to the district.
Oh, okay.
China would fund the teacher to come here and teach.
Wow.
So we brokered that arrangement while I was there as well. So yes, and the other way around, if we wanted to send a teacher to China
One of
to
our
teach
teachers.
English, for example, if they wanted that experience, they would provide them with an apartment and everything.
Put it
Wow.
on the school committee on this.
Yes, we can.
Comes out of
we
our
can cer-
stipend, Joe.
we can certainly, I'll certainly make the arrangement for you. If you'd like to travel over, we'll send a group of kids. I'd be happy to have you go over as a chaperone. You know, absolutely.
All the street fish included.
Right?
All the street fish.
All the street fish you can eat.
All the street fish you can eat.
And tea.
I had someone had mentioned to me about going out for barbecued lamb. So this sounds fantastic. So I get to the place where the barbecued lamb's going to be served, and they back the car out of the garage.
Oh,
And
no.
it was an automotive garage, and you could see the gas, and you could see, and there's some guy mixing up lamb, you know, in a dish on the floor. I said, "You got to be kidding me!" I ate it. I'm fine, you know. But, so you never know what you're going to eat or where you're going to find it.
Right.
Yeah, fantastic. Great culture, great people.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Bob. All right, so we'll move on to the assistant report of the assistant superintendent for business human resources. Kathy.
I have for the committee's approval this evening 4 warrants. The first warrant is in the amount of $15,846.74.
Take a motion from Don, second from Mike. All in favor? Motion passes.
The second warrant is in the amount of $310,075.93.
Take a motion from Jen, second from Joey. All in favor? Motion passes.
The third warrant is in the amount of $20,350.39.
Take a motion from Joe, second from Joey. All in favor? All in favor, motion passes.
And the last warrant is in the amount of $65,552.85.
Take a motion from Jen, second from Dawn. All in favor? Motion passes.
And that's all I have this evening. Thank you.
Kathy. All right, we'll move on to The report of the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction Assessment, Dr. McIntyre.
Great, thank you. I have 2 updates for the committee. The first one is I want to provide the committee with updates for academic department and grade levels across the Milford Public Schools. And the first area I want to highlight tonight is science. Our curriculum team leaders for science are Marianne O'Sullivan at Brookside, Angie Vandell from Memorial School, Shannon Roach from Woodland, Alyssa Holland from the middle schools, and Deborah Sanzone from Milford High School. And I want to just highlight some accomplishments and goals for each of the levels, basically, so you get a sense of kind of what they're working with and the issues they're dealing with. For the elementary level, they're researching new curriculum and programs that align to the new science standards for Massachusetts. They're looking at programs to kind of update their curriculum at the elementary level. Also, the elementary science connected to this is they participated in a presentation on science fusion that integrates STEM and the new Common Core state standards for ELA. So there's a big writing component and a big nonfiction reading component connected to this particular curriculum. Also, there was a math and science night at Woodland that took place on April 8th. This event was very well attended, and students and parents participated in math games, science experiments, a science Jeopardy game, which Craig Consigli said he did very well on. He wanted me to report that to you. That was developed by the students, and experiments that combined both music and science, which was very interesting. In terms of the goals, they want to discuss the feasibility of reinstating a science fair at the elementary level. They're continuing to explore various curriculum options moving forward that align to the new standards, modify lesson plans connected to the FOSS kits that we're currently using and the new proposed standards, and then develop common assessments that are used in conjunction with the FOSS kits that are aligned to the state and national science standards. For the middle school, a big focus was really around curriculum alignment to not only the state curriculum frameworks, but a lot of the movement around STEM that's happening nationally. STEM is science, technology, engineering, technology, and math combination. All assessments are aligned to curriculum maps and standards, and that's like a 9-word sentence, but it's a big undertaking. And they've really done a lot of work this year to really align their assessments to both the curriculum maps and the standards, including the Common Core state standards. So they're bringing a lot of writing and nonfiction reading right into the science curriculum at the middle school level, and my hat's off to them for that. They're also working on vertical alignment of the district-determined measures with a focus on question rigor and comparability across grade levels and courses. In terms of goals for the middle school, they're working to integrate the Common Core literacy standards again into the curriculum maps. Standards are being met in the classroom, but they want the taught curriculum to be reflected in the maps that we're using. 2 areas of focus include making connections and drawing conclusions between what's happening in the labs and the scientific concepts and the development of the common assessments. And then they're looking to get, again, more writing into the curriculum at each grade level 5 through 8. They're also looking, again, and this is happening K through 12, and you're going to hear this for the high school too, potential adoption of the new science standards, which are referred to as the next generation science standards. You'll start hearing that term bantered about. They were actually released for the part of the adoption process, which is actually a lengthy process, last April, so April of 2013. So everybody across the state, and actually across the country, because these are kind of becoming the equivalent of the National Common Core standards for science, Massachusetts put their own spin on them, and now we're kind of adapting and adopting based on those new standards. They're also reviewing the biology MCAS scores based on the new high school schedule change. That's one of the goals for next year, and seeing how they can support different and better ways to support how the 8th grade curriculum can support the transition to biology from 8th to 9th grade. So we're going to be looking at that for next year. And then they're also preparing and discussing for the Physics First initiative for the high school, where a group of students will take maybe the physics test as opposed to the biology test as part of their graduation requirement. In terms of the high school, again, there's a lot of work connecting the high school curriculum, which is aligned to the state standards, to the new Common Core state standards. Every teacher is a teacher of reading and writing now, and they really want to integrate that work into what they're doing at the high school. There's kind of 3 big initiatives there. They're bringing in appropriate news and journal articles to share with students, and they have guided reading questions, and they're asked to summarize and relate the article to the science class they're currently taking. And also sometimes taking a position on a particular topic too. So doing some persuasive writing, some arguments, that sort of thing. Instead of having students answer a series of questions connected to video, films, or multimedia presentations, they're really trying to focus on writing prompts and written responses to those types of activities. So they're really doing a little more critical thinking connected to that kind of those kinds of materials. Some biology classes are piloting research papers with the intention that this might be rolled out as a requirement for all science classes in the 2014-15 school year, again, to connect it, to get more writing into the curriculum. Assessments are aligned to the curriculum maps and standards. They're going to make some modifications to assessments to better prepare students for either the PARC, MCAS Plus, or Smarter Balance, whichever direction the state goes in. So they're doing a lot of work on looking at the types of questions that are being asked in all three areas. And then last year, and I actually met Deb Sanzone when I first started, she was in the process of a chemical safety program where they were kind of taking out all the old chemicals from the high school, doing a full inventory, and it's kind of a big safety measure. So OSHA was here. There was a big process aligned to it. So every day she would walk down and she'd have some dirt on her face, and going through that process, which was a big undertaking. And then again, they're aligning the DDMs, the district determined measures, to key curricular concepts. And again, they're hoping to provide data to help improve instruction and student learning. They want to focus on lab skills for our students and the writing connected to the lab work. And again, looking at the lab opportunities for the AP courses and all courses, and then reviewing and incorporating, again, the next generation science standards. So those are really kind of what's happening. You're seeing some consistency across from the elementary to the middle to the high school. There's a big push for writing. There's a focus on the new standards. There's a focus on bringing the Common Core state standards, the writing and the literacy, more, and not that that wasn't happening before, but they're really looking at it with a critical eye.
Thank you, Kevin. Any members have any questions for Kevin?
It's not a question, it's just a comment. The first thing is, I'm thrilled that they're actually talking about bringing back the science fair. Because I never understood why that was taken away. I mean, I loved it as a kid, and
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was a big part of the science curriculum. And a quick question, when is the biology MCAS at the high school taken?
It's a ninth grade test. So it's
No, I mean, what time of year?
It's actually right around now, and I forget if they've already taken it or they're about to take it, but it's in this
Yeah.
1 month kind of period.
Yeah, I'm really anxious to see the results of that, and the reason being, and for the new members, with the change from the block to the full schedule, the complaint was always these kids that took it the first half, and then all of a sudden now it's May and you're being asked to take a biology test, and you haven't taken it in 3 or 4 months, so I'm really anxious to see if this has had a positive impact.
We'll do a
on
full
us.
analysis of the results
Yeah.
when we get them, probably sometime in September or October, depending on when they come back from the
Okay.
state.
Great.
Absolutely.
Any other members? Kevin, just one quick question that I would have for you. With all of this changeover to incorporating writing throughout everything, which I think there's definitely has its value, is there any look at what impact that will have on, for instance, there's any students that have any language-based learning disabilities? One of the things that's sort of as I'm sure I don't want to tell you, you know this far better than I do, but just thinking about it are we testing for whether they're of their knowledge of science, or are we testing their ability to write?
I think you're doing both to some degree, and any accommodations or modifications a particular student would follow them into their science class. So the goal is obviously moving every student towards independence, but we would provide support across the curriculum for additional writing activities and that sort of thing. So I think to answer your question, you're really looking at both things. You obviously want them to learn the content, but you want them to be able to express themselves in writing to respond to that content. And that's where the writing piece and push comes in and really push their thinking.
Yeah, and I guess that one of my questions on that, I guess, is, and it's more just sort of a takeaway I guess I would have is there, yes, I get that we're testing on both.
Mm-hmm.
So are we evaluating on them separately for students that we know, writing is not their strength. They may be tremendous science students, but writing's not their strength. So are we evaluating them, in essence, giving them a grade, independently of, oh, you know what, you're a really great science student, you know what, we actually just need to work on your writing, versus understanding, yeah, you know what, there's really a gap here in your science and you happen to be a tremendous writer.
Yeah, and I think it's going to look differently, like in your K2 classes versus your high school classes in terms of expectations. But I would say that I think the writing piece is really to kind of push that thinking. And I think obviously we want to look at what they know in terms of the content, but the writing is a way to express that knowledge. With that being said, we want to provide the support if a particular student needs it or a group of students need it to kind of get them where they need to go. And we're almost taking a rising tide lifts all boats kind of approach, where we're trying to increase the expectations everywhere with the hope that everybody's going to kind of reach those goals by the time they leave us in 12th grade.
Yeah, which I think is great, and I think it's, I just, that's always been my concern, quite frankly. And I've actually had several special ed teachers actually share similar concerns that have said, you know, we're, at some point, we're not, at some point, you know, are we really testing content or are we testing writing skills? And I've had special ed teachers that have said, if you want to know if a child with severe language skills can write, I can answer that question now. I don't need to give them a test. But the answer is no.
And there's actually
So-
there's a great debate going on nationally with the PARCC test and the Smarter Balance test, because they're approaching how to accommodate for students with disabilities a little differently. And I'll actually bring that article. It was an Ed Week article that came out this week, and just share it with the committee as part of the packet. It's very interesting, the different approaches that they're taking and the different pushback they're getting from different advocacy groups.
No,
Just to kind of give you a sense of that.
Yeah,
So
I think
I'll
that's,
share that with you.
I think that's great. I wanted to share that. That's
Yep.
something that's come up
Absolutely.
in conversations
Absolutely.
as we kind of think about the park versus MCAS and some of
Yep,
this
and we're trying
evaluation piece.
to be sensitive of the needs of all of our students.
Excellent. Anyone else? All right, we'll continue.
All right, the second piece is, I'm doing a two-part feedback on the PARCC test. I want to start with the elementary students. The high school students are taking the online version of the test, I think, in a week or two. So we'll get that feedback along with the middle school feedback together. But I want to give you a sense of what the initial reaction is to the PARCC test of the students that were field tested at Woodland. So we held brief focus groups with our students who participated in the PARCC field test. And we received mixed feedback, which was kind of to be expected from our elementary students on PARCC. Third grade students seem to generally think the PARCC test was more difficult than MCAS. Fourth grade students seem to think the test was generally less difficult than MCAS. And part of that might be because the fourth graders have the long comp in fourth grade, and the third graders don't, and PARCC doesn't have the long comp as part of that particular assessment, so I think they were relieved not to see a big writing piece connected to it. I just want to share some quotes from some of the third grade students. Some of the questions were harder and confused me. I had to keep looking back in the text to find the answers. The questions were tricky. The layout was confusing for me. I wasn't sure where to put the answers. The hardest part was that we had to actually explain how we chose the answer we chose. When we had to compare two different passages, it was very easy to find the similarities, but it was very hard to find the differences. I would tell the PARCC test makers, you need a hook. The stories need to be more interesting.
You need a hook.
I love that they use that phrase. They need a hook. It's good.
That's probably coming right from our English teachers. The PARCC was great. We only had one writing response per day, which is different from the MCAS. Comparing stories was easy. We were used to doing compare and contrast from class. The questions were easier. PARCC passages were much longer. They were 3 to 4 pages long. The questions were different. They were questions that led to other questions, also follow-up questions from the previous one. I liked the questions that asked us to rewrite the ending. It was hard to answer some questions because they seemed like they meant the same thing, and we had to choose the best answer. So that was from the third grade. And we specifically asked them not to talk to us about content, but more their experience with the test, just to kind of, in terms of the questions. And then for fourth grade, less questions to answer. The time limit was great. It helped me focus and get to work, which is very interesting because one of the big concerns about MCAS versus PARCC was MCAS you have the full day. PARCC is pretty strict time limits. We didn't have to spend all day taking the test. The amount of time we were given was perfect. There was one story split into multiple sections rather than multiple passages about different topics. The sections we read were shorter. Open response questions weren't as complicated because it related back to the passage we read. Hard to find the difference in like passages. It was hard to explain our answer. We would have to circle the correct response, then explain why we knew what was the right choice. The layout was confusing. There was a lot of questions about where to put your answer because it's a very different format than the MCAS, which was interesting feedback we got from a number of students. There were multiple correct answers. It was hard to circle 2 correct answers when we really used to circling 1 correct answer. There was a lot of space given for answers. It was hard to fill all the space. That's some of the advice you give students on the MCAS, and I guess there's like 8 pages in the PARCC exam, so the kids were like, oh my God.
Right. Fill the space. It's 8 pages.
I wish we could write in the test books. We couldn't use the strategies the teachers taught us specifically for the MCAS, so there's gonna be a whole different strategy and approach to taking these tests. The examples they gave to help were great. It was easy to compare 2 passages. The teachers prepared us, most of what we do every day in class prepared us for the park, so that's good news. The strategy the teachers taught us really helped. It made it difficult not to write in the book. There were several of those, so I put a couple of them in there. So it gives you a sense of kind of what the experiences were for us. And these are quotes directly from 3rd and 4th graders. And there was a lot of them. I tried to kind of pull some in that would give you kind of a sense of what they were thinking. I hope to share teacher feedback in the future too, because the teachers had some experiences with Park. I really want to include that with the online piece, because that's going to be the very different piece of how it's done. And then we'll have a larger sample of teachers to pull from too, and then also share some secondary student feedback as well.
I mean, did you have a lot of like bad reviews as opposed to good reviews, or was it pretty much 50-50? Like,
you know,
I don't want to ever take this test again. I want to go back to the other one.
It's hard to say because we didn't take really a quantitative approach, but I would say generally the 3rd graders, it was probably like 2/3 to 1/3 liked MCAS better than Park, and the reverse was true for 4th grade. You know, it's about 2/3 liked Park better than MCAS, but I think it's tough to really look at that because of the long composition that happens in 4th grade. That's a killer. And I think that they saw, oh, no long comp, this is great. I think that's the approach they took. So I think it's hard to tell, but I think that
First go around.
yeah, but we did receive some positive feedback, which is kind of a good thing. And the fact that we heard from a lot of students saying they felt well prepared for the tests, and what we've been hearing from everybody is that the test questions are going to be significantly more complex, harder, pushing your thinking, more writing, multiple steps, and there wasn't an overwhelming number of students who said,
Right.
you know, this is terrible. It was, we got it from some, but it wasn't the majority.
Okay. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Kevin, will you eventually get the results from the Park test?
We will not from the field test. If we choose to go with Park next year, we'd get those results just like we get the MCAS results in a very similar kind of format.
Okay, so we won't have the opportunity to compare how they did on the Park test to the MCAS.
We won't. I don't know how the state's going to, or even the consortium's going to present the data, because I don't even know if they're going to do it by state. They might just provide some general information about how it went, but we're not going to get anything from any feedback from any of the students who took the test as part of the field test, and nobody is in any state.
Just to kind of connect the 2 things that you've been talking about, I think the work that you are doing with science, the writing, it all applies. And when people ask, are they teaching to the test, it's not about teaching to the Park or the MCAS, it's about making sure the kids have that depth of knowledge. And I think science has been a moving target, and the work that you're doing to incorporate and to give that ownership to all teachers, that everyone is a teacher of writing. And I think, to Scott's point, they will have to look carefully when they're mapping curriculum at, what are we doing to support those kids
Absolutely.
who are
That's a great point.
are challenged writers. But, at the end of the day, I think everything you're talking about is in-depth and rigorous, and it's going to help our kids. And from what it appears, it looks like the state is pushing us towards the Park. I saw an interesting email yesterday that said that we'll have a choice next year, but it seemed that they were really directing us towards the Park.
Yeah.
And then they had an interesting phrase of how they're going to compare student growth from MCAS to the Park, an equipercentile or some strange word I've never heard before. I think it might have been a made-up word, but they're claiming that they'll be able to assess growth and progress from one assessment to the other. I don't know how valid that is going to be, but.
I would say a few months ago when I presented to the committee about Park versus MCAS, I was like 90% sure we were going to Park. I would say I'm a little less confident now, just based on some of the pushback we're hearing from across the state. Again, I'd say it's more 70-30 than 90-10. I'd say we're still probably going in that direction, but just the chatter I'm hearing at different levels, it's a little more up in the air, because there's talk of smarter balance, there's talk of MCAS plus.
Well, I've never heard of MCAS plus. That's
Well,
how can you make it more plus than it already is?
I might have just coined that phrase, but it'd be sticking with the MCAS, but adopting it more to the Common Core and adding those types of questions into it.
Okay.
Begin to call them Secretary of Education tomorrow.
Yeah.
What's that phrase? I wrote it down.
Yeah.
And never underestimate the Department of Education to effectively compare apples
So
to oranges.
It'll be very
That's what
very
they
interesting to
say.
see how this plays out. It'll be very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Any other members have any questions?
Question.
I'm sorry, go
I
ahead.
just wanted to ask if the feedback you got from the grade 3 and 4 students, will that be able to be given to the consortium? Will they be looking for feedback? Do they care?
I know that they did focus groups at a few sites. They actually had DESE folks at a few sites doing focus groups with students like a day or two after they took the test. And I don't know if that was part of a study they were doing. I saw it in an article. I haven't seen anything in terms of this is the approach we're taking to determine the effectiveness of the field test or the experience of the students or the experience of the faculty members.
Thanks.
One question I did have for you, just, and I seem to have my special ed hat on this evening. As we think about the park, specifically as it relates to IEPs, have you connected, and I'm sure you have, but just for the benefit of myself as well as the viewing public, specific language in IEPs, obviously IEPs being legal documents, specific language relates to timetables and everything else, and an adjustment. They specifically mention MCAS in some cases. Is there work being done to go back through, will they effectively now have to go through and rewrite, as every IEP does every year, but now rewrite to ensure that park is included in that?
So we're starting to receive some guidance. For this field test, we were directed not to make any changes
Okay.
and kind of make the accommodations based on the guidelines that were kind of given. If we go with park for our test for next year, we will have to make adjustments to IEPs, and that would probably happen through the annual review process. In some cases, we may have to do amendments if the timing is off for the annual review process.
Yeah, just
But-
thinking about the MCAS.
But Meg
that are-
Belcito and her group are kind of on top of that, and we're really looking at it. The fact that they haven't, I don't think they've fully, just based on this controversy that's happening at the national level between the two different consortia, I think there's gonna be some movement in terms of accommodations and modifications, especially based on feedback from the field tests. So I think once we get some guidance from either the state or the consortium or both, we'll start to make some moves once we make a decision on whether we're gonna go park or MCAS.
Yeah.
For next year, but it's definitely part of the process. And I can tell you that Meg and I have sat in several meetings discussing this very topic.
Yeah, just as I'm thinking about kind of the IEP annual reviews come up, as you know, all year round.
Yep.
And just thinking if
It's-
the test is in March and my review meeting's in June or the end of May, are we now essentially forcing our special ed teachers to go back and have to reschedule meetings, re-meet with all the parents, and now rewrite documents?
Yep.
So are we?
And it's not apples to apples, so we will have to
Right.
do some of that. So there
Okay.
will be some work connected to it, without a doubt.
Thank you. All right. We'll move on then. Thank you, Kevin. Move on to subcommittee updates. So we'll start with Safety and Security Subcommittee. So
Monday.
you're meeting this coming Monday, okay? So that's a really quick update. The next one would be, you win the record. The next one would be from the Policy Subcommittee. Do we have any updates?
So I sent an email out earlier this week that you were copied on to try and schedule something over the next week or two. So I think we're gonna compare some calendars today and then follow up with Patrick after the fact and get something on the calendar.
Okay, looking to schedule. Got it. Thank you. And thirdly, the Athletic Subcommittee.
Yep, we had our first meeting this week. We had 3 main topics that we talked about. One was the handbook, because the high school operates under the MIAA handbook, which doesn't cover junior high. So junior high is covered under the MSSAA. Richie is going to be sending me information on that. I did get a copy of the high school handbook, but I'm definitely going to need the help of the policy subcommittee on this. What I did do is I reached out to Nancy. Well, she actually responded to me that she's already in contact with the MSSAA. I hate having to say that over and over again, but anyway, there's a concern. Richie met with Noah and Nancy, and the conversation of eligibility came up. And Richie explained that the current eligibility rules based on the MIAA today technically allows a Milford High School student, and I was shocked to hear this, but you could technically flunk 2 classes and still participate in a sporting, in sports. I know when I was a kid, it was always you flunked 1, it was okay. Flunked 2, you're off, no questions asked, right? And then the other piece was Nancy is asking for 0, right? So high school has 2. Nancy's asking for 0. I'm fine if she wants to promote the academic part, because I know that, to me that's more important. But I also would like the policy subcommittee to look into us allowing children that have flunked 2 classes to still participate in classes. Because as a parent, I don't find that acceptable, right? So the way Richie explained it is, how that happens is if a kid's taking a full schedule, and I don't know enough about the credits, but it's like 32 or 36. So if you flunk 2, you're at 66%, and the MIAA cutoff is 65%. So you can still participate, even though you flunked 2. Although Richie said we don't have to follow the MIAA on that, and that's why I'm going to ask that we recommend this policy subcommittee to look into this and set a policy for the junior high and the high school, independent of the MIAA rules, to make sure that, we're setting a higher standard than what we have right now, because I just wasn't pleased to find that out. The second thing that we talked about was the junior high program, and as Richie presented here a couple months back, that he chose the soccer program because it's the easiest one to implement here. The budget for that, he's confirmed, is $15K. That includes equipment, uniforms, coaching, and transportation. It's local schools. That's why he chose it. So it sounds pretty exciting. At least we can learn a lot, see what other programs we want to expand into in the future. He did bring up a concern that he posted the 2 coaching spots, to which he's had no applicants. So that sparked a conversation around, who is coaching these days. And I was, again, I still can't believe this, but out of the 17 phys ed teachers in our school district, 2 coach. He said 1, maybe 2. And having grown up in this town, having grown up in sports, I found that really alarming. So that's one thing I think we're gonna look into. The third thing that we talked about was school choice. The impact of that sports has, as well as academics. I was hoping that the junior program would really keep kids more involved in our sports programs and get them introduced, and hopefully we keep on holding on to our athletes. Richie said this is a really big problem, especially in recent years. We have lost a lot of our star athletes to other schools. And the conversation was around, is it because of academics? Because a lot of the kids are going to some nice schools, Milton Academy, Lawrence Academy, Mount St. Charles. So it might be an academic thing. But when it's your star athletes consistently, Richie voiced a concern, and what he asked for, and I think this is a great idea, was if we could survey the parents that are school choicing out this year and have a deep conversation with them and understand, is it sports, is it academics, is it a combination, and why, right? Richie was asking for the data. He said if I had that data, it would certainly help me in my job. So, and I couldn't agree more. And the sad thing is, when a kid leaves, 90% of what Richie gets is rumor. And he explained a couple situations that it was a rumor, and when he talked to the parent, it was something different. So if we could put that together and pull that data in, I think that would tell us a lot. And actually had invited Tony Chinapi, who's the former athletic director here from the 70s, and he brought up a good point. It's like, it's one thing to bring in these programs, but it's really important to make sure that we're hanging on to these kids and making sure that they want to stay here in Milford. So he said we really need to get to the bottom of finding out, more about the data and give it to Richie, because that's what Richie's looking for, and I think it's a great idea.
Don,
Did-
not to interrupt you for a
Yep.
second, did he have an idea of, does he have a ballpark number as far as how many what the school choice, when you talk about the star athletes, do you have a number on that, roughly?
It's funny, I actually asked him that. Now, I knew of 14 kids myself, just from my kids participating in sports, and I knew the kids over the last 2 years that have left, but he gave me some numbers in North Attleboro, but he didn't have the ones in here. So what I did ask, and I told him I was going to ask you, Kathy, if you could get us numbers as to how many kids are, school choicing out. I don't know if we know if it's academics or athletics or other reasons. I have no idea. But when Richie was I know he gave me an example of North Attleboro and one other town. He knew how many left, and then he had a good idea how many were leaving for athletics. So
Yeah, we'll look into that with a survey as well. I'd be interested to know myself. Melissa keeps those numbers, so I'll work with her on that.
Yeah, I would be very interested, especially given that,
Yeah.
I mean, Milford has always been, we've always enjoyed so many students being school choiced in for a variety of things,
Yeah.
athletics being one of them.
Right,
Concerning to hear that there's a potential that we may have students that are actually now school choicing out as a result of something that kids used to school choice in too. So I'm.
well, we don't know, and that's
No,
what we
that's
wanna
why I
find
said
out,
I used
you know?
deliberately,
Yeah.
deliberately weak language, saying
Yeah.
it's a may.
So those
we
were
have to
the
make sure
those were
too,
the
though.
three things that we discussed, and we're going to be meeting again on Wednesday, and I have opened it up to include Kerry, but more importantly Nancy and Noah, because I guess Nancy and Noah were already getting involved for the junior sports program, and that's the big thing here. So we'll be meeting Wednesday at 6 p.m. But those meetings I want to point out are also open to the public. If anybody wants to reach out or wants to attend these, I mean, they're more than welcome to.
I think we need to clear up some confusion though, because I had a conversation with Richie the other day after you and I spoke, and maybe the way I put it to him, but he clearly told me he knew of only one family that had school choiced out for athletics. But maybe it was the way I asked the question, so I think we need to go back to him and find out, is it 14 for all the programs? And he thought that we were talking.
We talked about the kids,
Right, I'm
so
saying
I
it was-
know it was a lot more than
Right, so
Yeah.
maybe he thought that I was talking about the, more the football program, but that's what I wanted to know. I wanna know what was the total number. So Bob, if you could kinda clarify that for us, that would be great, cause now this is the second time I'm hearing the 13, 14 number and not the one number.
There were a lot, he said, that went to BBT. And there were several. I was really shocked to hear the number of, several kids at Milton Academy, Lawrence Academy. I'm like, wow, those are nice schools. So,
If you're gonna pull those numbers,
Yeah.
we probably should go back several years to see if there's a trend, because we could find, we're looking at 14 saying that's alarming, but we could find 3 years ago it was 20, so the numbers are trending in the right
Right.
direction.
I think it's important to have I think it's, there's some more questions to be asked for certain.
yeah. Richie's, again, just to summarize it, Richie's big thing is there a way to maintain or hold on to some of these star athletes? Because it just seems kind of odd that over the last couple of years, and I can tell you right now, and I won't mention names, but like the sophomore class, like the top 5 athletes all went to different schools in the sophomore class.
We're concerned with keeping students,
Yeah.
right? Not star athletes.
Yeah.
No, we're
Absolutely.
concerned with keeping all Milford residents, actually, Joe.
Right.
Absolutely.
Not just athletes or
Yeah,
students.
I just
Actually,
keep hearing
we're
athletes thrown out there. We're concerned with students.
correct, but this is specifically an
Right.
athletic
Okay.
program, and we're talking about all Milford students. So I think it's good that we certainly ask the questions.
Yeah.
So, excellent. Anything else to add to the update? Any other questions?
May I ask a question? Yeah, if
Sure.
we school choice out,
Mm-hmm.
does that because we school choice in,
Right.
do they go together? if you do one, you have to do the other. So if we participate in school choice, which we voted on last meeting,
Right.
does that mean we take kids but we automatically release our students also, or?
Well, can I actually, I think there's two things happening here. I think there's, the school choice would be a public school to a public school.
Yeah.
And then there's the tech
Yeah.
school piece, which is, I think, not even necessarily connected to school choice,
Yeah.
because every student in Massachusetts has
Yeah.
an opportunity to go to a tech school.
Mm-hmm.
But you also have students who are choosing to go to private
Which is not
schools
school
that
choice,
aren't
right.
connected to any money, either
Right.
coming into or going out of the district. That's a parent's personal private choice.
Mhm.
But your question, so we participate in school choice, because you voted the last meeting to do that.
Mhm.
So that's to allow students in.
Yeah.
Students can always elect to go out, but only to a district that is approved to go into.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So I think it's worth certainly asking some questions, and certainly it sounds like you've got, Richie's got some questions that he wants to have answered, so I think
He
that's,
said he has a
that's good.
long list.
Yeah,
so
that was my understanding as well, is that he's got a long list, so I think that's good, and,
that's good.
it's good to have that dialogue begin to open. All right, we will continue on. Move on to new business. Any members have any new business? Okay. Any members have any old business?
I just wanted to
Tom.
see, and I think you were gonna take the lead on this. The last meeting I had talked about the need for the guidance department to really reach out to schools and find out what the acceptance criteria is at these schools, so that when they're telling kids to apply, they have a good understanding of what, does that child meet that criteria? I didn't know if you
We're
took
looking
that
to
back.
do a presentation, I believe, and I forget the dates of the next two meetings,
No
but
worries, yeah.
next meeting or the meeting after, I think we're gonna try to get, Matt Bayonne on the agenda.
All right, Matt? Oh, all right, okay.
Any other members? All right, the next item on the agenda is adjournment. We do have an executive session this evening, so I will need to take a roll call. So we will be moving into executive session to be held related to contractual matters, that the committee will not be, and the committee will not be returning to open session. So I do need to take a roll call. Start with Joey, Jen,
Yes.
Yes.
Michael, Joe.
Yes.
Joe, and yes for me. So we will be moving into executive session. We do need to take a motion for adjournment from open session. Take the motion from Mike, second from Dawn. All in favor? We will have a good evening, everyone. Thank you so much.